Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to discuss the United States' possible expansion into the Arctic Circle, which would be potentially acquiring Greenland, along with maybe annexing Nunavut, a territory in Canada. Now, we know Donald Trump really wants Greenland, and I think when it comes down to it, with the Denmark situation, it being controlled by Denmark, Trump's going to end up having to say, we're going to either do this the easy way or the hard way, because especially in 2025 modern times, Denmark is going to try and posture their way out of this. The idea of, oh, the United States is this big bad bully, how dare they? The reality is Greenland already wants to be independent as it is, but it's like the United States is so much more powerful, and there's no way any of those European countries would be able to fight the United States from just claiming and occupying Greenland as it is. And they can clutch their pearls, which is what they would do, but they're not going to sacrifice anything to try and defend Greenland. And it would be, I mean, we would want to work with Greenlanders when it comes to developing infrastructure on the massive island. And so it's looking like that might be what it comes down to. You could get a situation where the United States might have to give Denmark something to release Greenland to allow the United States to purchase Greenland. That could also happen, but I do think Donald Trump really wants Greenland. And again, Denmark is really in a situation to where they can clutch their pearls, they can get very angry, but they are in no position to contest the United States taking Greenland. They are not powerful enough. The European Union is not in position either. These countries do not have the resources. They're not the war machine that the United States is. And it really would make no sense when you think about the West in general, in terms of the United States being the massive superpower, the huge member of NATO, to where we supply 78% of the military budget in NATO. It would make no sense to fight and potentially make the United States or alienate the United States against some of those European countries because they're upset about the United States taking Greenland. We have built ourselves up to a point to where we should be able to, in a diplomatic reason, which is what this would be, because we want to be able to mine there, and it's also going to help the people of Greenland as well. Their infrastructure is going to get better, and it's just more of an investment into the country. We've built ourselves up into the position to where, yes, we can just take the country, and you're going to deal with the pearl clutching and stuff like that, and that is what it is. This is a specific thing. It's not a hostile takeover. So if Trump is able to get Greenland, would he potentially try to... I mean, there's several things you could do. There's the idea of trying to connect Alaska with the lower 48. I know people have talked about that. There is the Alaskan Panhandle right here. It doesn't fully connect. You would have to annex a part, and honestly, a pretty big part based on the geography, a pretty big part of British Columbia to get a highway that could connect that panhandle with Alaska. You could also annex Yukon. I mean, I'm not saying Trump's going to be able to do this. I've been very bearish on Trump's chances of acquiring any Canadian land. Now, if push came to shove, could the United States take over Canada? Yes. Would it be worth it? I would say no, based off of the population in Canada. That's why Greenland's a different situation entirely. Greenland is 57,000 people. Canada, it's like, in terms of the population, based off of the land area, it's very small, mainly because of the three territories that are not provinces. They have basically it's like 120,000 people in the three northern territories. In the lower provinces, you're talking about people that don't want to be American citizens. Now, there are dynamics that go into that, like Trump potentially offering them certain things, and especially if you get them in this stranglehold to where you have their economy collapse because of tariffs, that could be an idea, but I'm just not sure if Trump's going to be able to enact those tariffs. Apparently, he's going ahead with them, and he's got a lot of tariffs going out everywhere. So we'll see what happens in terms of that, but it's 25% tariffs, and Canada's going to try and hit back. But if the longer this goes on, inevitably it will hurt Canada significantly more than the United States. And all the Canadians can hope is it becomes this propaganda thing with liberals saying it's not worth it. What is Trump doing? Look at these prices. They're outrageous. The power's being shut off in certain states. And using that as propaganda as to, maybe pressure Trump to end the tariffs against Canada. But if it goes on long enough, Canada will be crippled by the tariffs more so than the United States, just based off of how we trade with Canada and the United States' ability to independently produce goods versus Canada, partially based on their limited population and also just the environment and climate in Canada. So I'm bearish on Trump taking any land in Canada. I don't, I'm not saying it would be a good thing to do that, but I have heard people say, well, just annex part of British Columbia, annex Yukon, and then very easily connect the lower 48 with Alaska, which would make things easier. You also have a situation, and this is why the United States has a weird relationship with Canada in general. If something crazy happens, and it's very unlikely because the United States is such a superpower that there would be any type of invasion into North America. If it happened, it would probably happen somewhere up here. It might happen across the Bering Strait with Russia going into Alaska, although Alaska is so huge and it's just hard to envision that. Or it could happen somewhere within the Arctic Circle, potentially trying to take the northern areas of Canada, the three provinces up there, and that would be Russia doing it. It's very, very unlikely, again, because you invade those areas, you're basically invading the United States. Now, technically, it's not the United States, and we cannot utilize those areas for mining, which is why it's frustrating, but we're going to be defending those areas. We will not allow an invasion. The United States will not. That's why the idea of, well, World War III happening, the United States would just annex Canada to make it easier, and Canada would 100% accept it if it was, do you want to be aligned with the United States during a world war or don't you? Yeah, you do. You're going to be annexed just to make things easier in terms of the passage and getting material to Alaska and to America. It might be easier to just annex Canada, but I'm sure they would be fine with allowing the United States to really do whatever they wanted in a wartime situation. When it comes to these islands, obviously the Northwest Passage, if you compare it to the Panama Canal, the canal is so much more valuable than the Northwest Passage right now. The Northwest Passage is a seasonal passage that freezes. It's only operational for certain months, but it is becoming more and more powerful. And you do have experts admitting and saying that at some point, whether it's 30 or 40 years, down the line, or maybe even, 2 decades, based off of the climate, the United States is going to have to do something to secure these islands as well as the Northwest Passage with how close it is to Russia. There are some differing claims. The Canadians think the Northwest Passage is there. The United States has said, well, no, it's an international strait. But right now, it's not like there's any toll like the Panama Canal. It's not like the United States has to pay the Canadians anything to use the Northwest Passage, but it is sparsely used right now, but that could change. Again, that's like Greenland. You're acquiring Greenland, and we'd already be able to mine things along the coast, but the idea is with the glacier melt, you're potentially going to be able to mine into Greenland and get even more natural resources that way. So what would Trump do in terms of trying to secure the Northwest Passage? Is it really worth it right now? Well, it's going to be a problem probably in 20 or 30 years in terms of the United States making sure, whether we do some type of deal or arrangement with Canada to where we share the Northwest Passage, or we make sure that's in control of our parties because of the threat of Russia, or the United States just annexes some of these islands in Nunavut to get full control of it. I'm not exactly sure, but it's obvious that Trump, to a degree, does want Canada. I mean, even if you can say it's a joke or whatever, I've been very wishy-washy on it. Like, it's just strange to me. The 51st state, it doesn't really make a ton of sense based off of the way they vote. They're very liberal. So Republicans are going to be, I mean, I guess Trump could say, well, I'm the savior. There'd be a lot of improvements for Canada in terms of if they get a 1-for-1 exchange rate, Canadian dollar with US dollar, you're going to make a lot more money. There's also been the idea of, why don't we just offer Greenland citizens like $100K each if there's only 57,000 of them, but that would have to be approved by Congress. But I mean, that is an idea if it does become a problem with Greenland. I don't know why, if you're Greenland, under any circumstance would you want to be controlled by Denmark over the United States. And it would be a situation similar to Puerto Rico. We would just be mining on Greenland. That's the only difference. Puerto Rico is in a very good spot, and a lot of people don't realize that with them being a territory, they kind of get the best of both worlds. But this is just a map to see what is Trump's next moves if he's able to acquire Greenland. You've got these islands right here. This is going to be very critical for the future when it comes to 10, 20 years down the road. And you can see this is just another, this outlines the Arctic Circle, and you can see the decline of ice there. But you've got Greenland right here, part of the Arctic Circle, and you've got all of these smaller little islands which are controlled by Canada right now. and the Northwest Passage within there. And there's the Bering Sea, the Bering Strait, there's Russia, there's Alaska. And then you also have this. You can just see the total makeup there is about 120,000 people. And that's the thing is, I'm not interested in annexing areas where we wouldn't be welcomed. Now, again, if Trump offers certain things, like if he cripples the Canadian economy with tariffs, they might have no choice. I know people have talked about Saskatchewan and Alberta as being conservative, and they are conservative, but you're just talking about gerrymandering. It's like, do we really want to do that? Like, oh yeah, we're going to take Alberta and Saskatchewan and allow them to vote and make them states, but none of the other provinces get that. I mean, that is just gerrymandering if you are Republicans. I really don't, that's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. But the idea would be, maybe annexing Yukon and parts of British Columbia. You can see the panhandle that was included. It wasn't like the United States territorial expanded and invaded Canada. That panhandle, the Alaskan panhandle, was part of the original purchase back in 1867, I believe, from Russia. And so there was a dispute on that as well. Canadians were not happy that that panhandle became American territory, but that's been our territory since we purchased Alaska. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I wonder if you could get, in terms of maybe just annexing some of these islands from Nunavut, like you allow Canada to keep the main. I mean, honestly, I would like to, because there are untapped resources up in Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and Yukon that the Canadians have not gotten to yet. And I mean, that land for parts of the year, like right now, it's basically uninhabitable due to how cold it is. But during the summer, you could certainly mine some stuff up there. But I almost wonder if you try and maybe just annex a part of Nunavut, like Baffin Island and the surrounding islands up there, to get full control, because you can see the Davis Strait right there, Baffin Bay, and then you do have the Northwest Passage right there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of what Trump wants. I mean, it does seem like Trump is saying, well, we're going to tariff you to death until you join us as the 51st state. But the Canadians do not want that. And again, things could change if their economy gets into a crisis situation, and then the United States is like, listen, we'll remove the tariffs if you join us. I still don't think it's very likely. I think Trump should focus on Greenland, and that's a situation where, this is what happens in modern time. These countries, they throw their hands up, they stomp, they say, how dare you? But that's a situation that's been explained. We get called as like the evil bully, when in reality, Greenland doesn't even want to be a part of Denmark. Greenland does not have the economy to hold themselves up. They already get money. It's about a third of their economy. GDP comes from Denmark anyways. And so that's why the United States would, I mean, unless Greenland wants to go at it alone, it would just make sense for the United States to acquire Greenland. And that's where we start just a massive surplus in terms of mining based off of the amount that we would be paying to acquire Greenland. Yeah, there'd have to be an investment in terms of mining processes. It costs money to mine and extract the resources, but eventually it would pay off significantly. And that's like Trump's white whale, is Greenland, is getting that country under U.S. control. And people talk about, oh, you shouldn't expand. It's globalism. That's 57,000 people. That's absurd. It's like, it's not even one electoral vote. There's no way it wouldn't be a state. It doesn't meet the requirements for statehood. There's not enough people there. Neither of those three provinces would meet them anyways. Yukon, Northwest, or Nunavut. So those provinces, even if they got annexed, they wouldn't be states. They would be territories, just like Puerto Rico, which honestly, if you're in the lower 48 or just you're in North America in general, Puerto Rico is pretty irrelevant. I mean, sure, they're a territory to the United States, but we don't really view them as part of, I mean, you can say, I guess it depends on your perspective, but they're just not talked about when it comes to elections. They're just not relevant. So it's not like, oh, well, we're requiring all this area, but it's under our control, but there is freedom, and there is, certain things those governments can do. And I don't think the United States would really change much in terms of Greenland and the amount of freedom they have to rule themselves, other than the United States would be mining. And also, we would probably put some more military presence in Greenland and more military bases, things like that. So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens in terms of what Trump wants to do with Canada. and just the Arctic control in general, but it is becoming more and more important. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.